Very interesting discussion across the day on various topics, starting from CIM, digital twin, and now we're into the application side of BIM, more into field. So just to set the tone for the discussion, I was reading through some recent surveys and some recent studies done. For the UK market, there's around 2.2 million people working in the construction sector. That's around 7% of the total workforce of the UK industry. And this 7% of workforce corresponds to more than 25, a quarter of the fatalities that is reported in the UK industry. So that's really alarming numbers considering the amount of people who are involved in the industry to the fatalities that we see. And then when we talk about safety, it's just not about fatality. It starts right from psychology of mindset and how it affects the worker to the extreme end of fatality. So it could start from as being affected because of something that happens to somebody, and also to how it affects the family and everyone that's involved. And we often sit back and talk about how BIM effectively works at the design stage. It's also important to see how we can take this to the field and how we can use it to enhance the site layout and how we can use it to enhance the industry that we fill. So Baha, with your experience being in the precast industry and of course in the side where we have a lot of influence directly working with the contractors, what would be your opinion and what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, well, as you said, for UK, it's interested figures. Okay, for UK, actually, there was a good roadmap, and they plan to change everything and all of their construction project actually to a complete BIM process. So regulation from the authorities and vision from government, it's really very important, and that helps actually to enforce the workflow and workforce of any industry in order to have a complete BIM process. And since I am from a prefabrication background, and the BIM itself as a software or as a process, you can call it whatever, it was really very important for our industry to have a complete benefits from a prefabrication process, and think about how to link your final products into the design stage, work with other subcontractor, with the main contractor, with a client. Since we also starting at the very early stage, at the design stage, and we are leading the subject by introducing our BIM model to all the stakeholders in the project. And we also advise them to start using and doing the same with us. Guys, this is our BIM model. You can start to build all your activity, have visual or coordination with all of your work together with our design, and introduce this to the client as a benefit, as an advantage for his project. That's something he can continue use it even after the handover of the project. So prefabrication, the BIM process, both of them linked together, it's really very important. But in UAE actually, still, I will not say that there are a lack of knowledge, but still it's very difficult actually to convince subcontractors and even the main contractor to start working in a BIM platform. That's still difficult. Still, people.
If it's not mandated, you find it difficult to convince them to start working within a collaborative environment.
Yes, we talk to them. We try to convince them. Not everybody could accept this. It's still actually difficult. Still,
does it enhance the site activities in terms of the coordination part and risk assessment? And
of course, especially when you have full automation for your process, and you go ahead and transfer this to the site, and you can have a life cycle of each and every element to you coordinated in the BIM model. So it's still actually difficult to convince some of the people in the market. Yeah.
So Elena, being an architect, how often do you see the approach of BIM towards risk assessment and BIM towards managing construction process right from the design stage. Do you see that often?
Not really, and I think that there is an important discussion that also needs to happen. And as we were discussing before, based on everything that has been talked during the day, we tend to talk about technology, and there is awareness of what technology can do for us, but I don't think that we fully understand it and the implications that it has for us. So we talk about BIM, we talk about data, we talk about information, but we keep doing, in a way, business as usual. And business as usual with something that is so disruptive as this is cannot happen anymore. And there are examples of this around the world because the way we behave as humans right now has completely changed in the last 30 years. So it's not realistic to think that the industry can continue making small, just incorporating technology without really changing the way we collaborate with each other.
Joy, as a consultant and as an architect, sorry, from civil structural background, you guys work on some really massive projects. So how often do you get contractor inputs early on during your construction stage to make design adaptable to construction or in terms of constructability? We're not talking about standard buildings, we're talking about one-of-a-kind projects which really require a different approach towards the build setup itself.
So actually, one of the challenges when you're doing a massive project is that we were asked to design something without contractor on board. So when we're modeling something or managing a BIM project, our question is, how can this model be used to a contractor? So what's the solution? What's our solution forward? Is that we, Oricon, should partner with contractors to know what's the best way forward. So we held workshops with contractor on how we could resolve previous issues, previous problems that we got moving forward.
Okay. Sheikh, now being again an architect, now you often see that architects are dreamers. They build up some of the best things that we have in the market is based on some of these dreams being realized. Now, how often do you see involvement of BIM in terms of field application, in terms of taking this forward, not just from the design desk, but from, do you get feedback in terms of contractor usage on field?
My name is Sheikh. I'm from RSP Architecture and planners and engineer. From my experience, I can see a lot of contractor. They are using extensively the BIM application. I'm sure this conversation is not to add up. We are not recommending. It's already proven. This technology, the BIM is already proven. Is many contractors is using it. Especially in my experience, we done a really complex design, which I don't think it's possible without BIM. It's like a lot of subcontractor. They gave the model to us, and then we coordinated all this facade and each and every element. We make sure that it's not clashing. We did everything, and then even we changed something in our design based on the site condition. More than that, what I feel is in this discussion how to take the BIM into beyond just modeling or making a shop drawing or anything like that. So because I don't know it's an advantage or disadvantage. The technology will getting better every 8 months. When the processor will go to the next level, this software guys will come with a new technology. And
I think that's something that we can't live without.
Yeah, because we can't avoid that, and immediately your client will go somewhere and he'll see the technology. He wanted same thing in your project. You should be equipped with all the what's happening in the market. I don't know, it's a bad or good. It's good for client. It's good for project.
Okay. Dr. Yasmin, now from an academic perspective, how would you recommend as a strategic approach? Would you say that there is a requirement and there is a need for taking BIM to field in terms of risk assessment, in terms of constructability reviews, in terms of safety reviews? I'm sure you have tons of data which will probably support this argument. Can you shed some light on it, please?
Thank you. Yes, yes, we do. Actually, we have this idea and research for years. We are dreamers as well, academicians. We dream a lot to support the industry. I have been on both industry and academia side, so I can see both challenges. And I can say that we need believers as dreamers. When I say dreamers, this is based on my experience. Like 20 years back, when we were trying to implement some new emerging technologies in construction projects, or a couple of years back when we were doing research with successful completion on how to implement again new emerging technologies in construction site for improved efficiency, health and safety, and for achieving ambitious sustainability targets, many more benefits. We can see how, because through research, we can see how these technologies can work together and can be incorporated. But the main challenge is industry to see the benefits of the use of technology and implement correctly. So there is a need for strategic approach. There is a need for understanding that these technologies are actually enablers.
Okay.
They are tools, and we have to approach them in a strategic manner. And first, increase awareness. We need awareness, interoperability, integrated project approach.
Now, earlier in the discussion, there was a lot of talk about people, process, and technology. And then often, I think the biggest barriers is that people are not up to the technology, or the technology does not meet people requirements. So the question that I will ask is, how important is it to have BIM or BIM to field application in improving and enhancing communication and collaboration? How often, or how would it change the way would it really affect the traditional approach? How different would it be from our traditional way of working? So Baha, could you?
Yeah, well, for the normal process of any project life cycle, we can see communication between all the stakeholders by email, by phone, fax, sending RFIs, sending hard copy of the drawing, letters, all this stuff. But imagine when you transfer all this the normal and traditional way, using the high advanced technology that we all have right now, using your BIM model, that you can have everything built in this model, even your communications, your request for any additional informations, all the changes that you can highlight, that you can do in your BIM model, and everybody, all the stakeholders in the project, they got an access for this BIM model, and everybody on board, he can see what are the changes.
So you're talking about more of a common data environment for all the stakeholders to be involved.
Exactly. So we are changing the way of communications between all the stakeholders. You have everything, and whatever you change, it goes immediately to everyone. Everyone is getting notified.
Okay.
You have smartphones that you can use also at the same time.
Joy and Sheikh, I think this is relevant to you guys. Recently on a site walk with some of our stakeholders that we work with, the design is done right, the coordination is done right, the modeling is done right, the shop drawings are approved. But then when you go on site, the question that then you ask is, why is it so? Why is it that you still have issues with what you've built? So then it all reflects on how this information is being transmitted to the guys on site. How do you see that as a problem in terms of how that works? And even Elena, please feel free to add.
Yes, I do see it as a problem because it's not planned. As we were saying before, there should be a strategy to use it. So the use of the data and how we collaborate with it should be planned at the early stages of it, because that's when we can get the benefit from later on. So the way that we collaborate needs to change intrinsically. So there's a paradigm shift in the way we do things and how we hand over information with each other. So the lines should be should be more blurred, and we should not be so concerned about our scope, but just why we're doing this for.
Okay.
So
So
because
it's
the
a
same
holistic
data,
approach, I guess.
yeah, because the same data that you have perhaps in the model can be used for safety in this case, or can be used for something else. But it's just about how you think of it. I have this feeling all the time that we're running behind technology, just trying to catch up, and we are not thinking smartly on how to use it for our own benefit. So I just think that we should stop for a second and have a more inclusive work environment between the different stakeholders at the early stages of the project to try to understand.
Yeah. Joy,
what
would you
we
like
need.
to add something?
Yes, I think one of the key principles that we need in collaboration is that getting the right information from the right person at the right time. So I think that's the key. So if we follow the mandate of PAS 1192 or ISO 19650 in information management, that information from design to construction should be accessible to everyone. Information should be transparent, so we don't get different information, or we don't spend a lot of hours looking for one information. So
What about the end user? Like, it's great that we all are BIM users, but people who are working on site. I mean, you're not talking about highly qualified or technically strong, people or they may not essentially be BIM aware. So how do we, then break that communication barrier with that sector, or how do we get those people at that level, or how do we get all of the construction professionals to get, we still have the traditional toolbox
actually,
talks.
the first thing we should do is, the BIM is not a specialized department or something.
Yeah.
Like the 10 people, like
Glass house,
like
suits
they will work on the very powerful machine, and then they will do BIM model. It's not a different specialization. Actually, it should be part of the each and every one responsibility. So in a BIM workflow, from the site engineer to engineer, even the vice president of the company, everyone should be involved in the BIM, so that we can do two things. One, we can save cost. So from the beginning, there is a discussion that why you don't want to implement the BIM in the site, because it's very expensive. If you want to go and hire a BIM specialist, like a BIM manager, they will ask money. This shouldn't should happen, because it's a very normal thing. Like now, we are not asking, like when you have a CAD process or anything, the CAD is everyone can do that. The same environment should happen.
So it should become habitual, or it should become something that's ingrained into the...
Ingrained, yeah. And then one more thing, there is always question that your BIM application is ready to take any job. I would say, even if you ask to any BIM specialist or anyone, it's not. Ideally, it's not possible, because like it can save your 70% of the time. Remaining 30%, you need to solve it. The problem is, because each and every one office, even each and every region, they have their own workflow, own standard, everything. That software can't meet your requirement. So we need to find your own way. But when you compare the technology, you shouldn't compare what I have and what I wanted ideally. You should compare with what I have before. Like, what are the problem? If I have a 70% of the thing, before I have like a 500% problem I had it before. Now I come up with something. Now the 30% is solvable.
Okay. Dr. Yasmin, I want to, Joe, you want to say something?
Yes, I want to add to your question.
Please.
I think to break the barriers between the non-technical person and the construction or technical people is through BIM. So we have a lot of technologies now that help aid BIM and to send the message to non-technical people. Say, for example, at Oricon, we're using virtual reality to do some safety training. So one of the risks in the construction site, or one of the thing that one of the things that we try to minimize inside is people. We try to minimize the presence of people. Minimizing presence of people means minimizing risk on site. So using using virtual technology and augmented technology, we put people off site and train them on how the building should look like. We give them safety trainings on using virtual technology, and also using model on cloud, model in your iPad, model in your phone. You could actually explain to non-technical people, this is how the building should look like, this is how the building should be constructed.
I think I'll add on from our experience. One of the things that we've done recently on a couple of our projects is almost all of the MEP service corridors, we've kind of modeled it, and we've taken it off-site and we've fabricated it, and it just comes and you can finish a stretch of corridor works in half the time, or probably a quarter of the time that you would actually take to build it. So that's something that as our company, we're investing in to make that a part of our process. And it just started to show dividends in terms of reduced safety impacts on site, reduced risk for construction, and then a stress on getting the engineering right.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's key as well to make this work. Now, Dr. Yasmin, one of the things that I want to see, safety by itself is not something that needs to be mandated by any client. It should be inbuilt in the company ethos that you work with. So the extent of application of technology in safety is essentially the ownership of any contractor that goes on site. Now, how much responsibility should the contractor then take, or in your opinion, in a strategic way, to actually use technology to improve on this mandated performance of safety?
First, let me start as a continuation of what we discussed.
Previous question.
Previous one, and I will come to that. First of all, I see it like not trying to push technologies in, but more like a whole life cycle approach to projects. And if we are trying to achieve sustainability or cost savings or time, time constraints, all these, or quality, how can we use these technologies, emerging technologies, like BIM? BIM involves many technologies. It's an approach. How to involve artificial intelligence? How can we let them communicate with each other? How these are going to help us give right decisions? How can we have a common data that we share, reliable data, instead of everybody having different data, everybody using different technologies? So we have to look, if the industry has the awareness, starts gaining the awareness. I believe we are still behind because technology developed, but we couldn't develop ourselves to understand how to use these technologies correctly. There's no one recipe for these, for the use of technologies. We have to look at it from our business cases, from project perspective. How can we incorporate these? But this needs awareness. For safety issues, for contractual, if we start using these, and if we integrate these technologies in our processes, this will happen anyway, because then there'll be standards. We don't have standards. If you have no standards, and if these technologies, use of these technologies are not in contracts, how can we ask contractors to comply? Yes, safety should be there. Safety processes should be already in standards, in contracts, and with awareness. It is through training, I believe. It is through giving this awareness, and this is actually the way we approach to education and training, giving the versatility, the required skills and training to industry professionals at all levels, to startups, to entrepreneurs, to labor, workforce, because at all levels this is required.
Baha, I just want to come back to a point that you mentioned earlier, where you did talk about early involvement as a from a design perspective and as a construction perspective. Now, one of the things that we are seeing right now is, as a company that we are, so we are working now with certain clients right at the pre-construction stage. So we were moving into a stage where even before the design is starting, as a contractor, we are getting involved to help with the design development. Now, in those phases, some of the objectives that we're looking to achieve is reducing the risk of constructability, reviewing of constructability, and then finally looking at how much of it we can actually get it into prefabrication and straight to site installation. Do you think this approach will increase in the coming days, or do you think that clients are far more comfortable in the traditional lump sum arrangement?
Nowadays you can see many contractors, they are involving in a design and build projects.
Yes.
Which is the case at the example what you just say right now.
Correct.
Because clients, they took time actually to take their final decision. Shall we go ahead for this project or shall we wait? They are keep assuming the budget, calculating the budget, making the design, make some sketches, and then they end up with a big delay. And they realize that we have to hand over this job after a certain time. So we don't have time to start making a design and then we appoint a contractor. So let's go ahead for getting a contractor involved from now before we finish the design. He work with a consultant and to start his design together with a consultant because he got some experience for this type of work, whatever it is. He can give the assumptions, he can suggest things, he can do also the budget based on the client requirement. So contractor, yes, many of them nowadays, not only they are involving just in the construction stage, but at the very early stage, making a design with a consultant.
So you think this is going to, this pre-construction is going to,
of course,
yeah, it's going to improve and increase on.
Due to the high demand on the market, yeah.
Sorry, I want to add a point on this one.
Yeah.
Usually, as architect, we don't like contractor to involve in the early stage because each and everything will be value engineered, and then our each and everything will be value engineered. It's not only from the view perspective, even the technical perspective. Even if you want to propose some waterproofing, or if you want to propose some fire rating based on the municipality civil defense code, immediately contract will scream, you know how much is it? It's huge, expensive. We can't do that. Even if you show that, no, we'll do it in a different. That's the one point. From the other point of view, from the client perspective, he know that what's exactly going to be built. So he also agree that. So he's not dreaming something. At the end, they will build something and say, okay, this is in a renter, this is in the actual building. Because of we saved 100 million, that's why you got it. It's not a last moment surprise. So from the beginning itself, if it's a contractor is involved, we know what is the reality, and then because of the saving,
There's no surprises.
there is no the last moment surprises.
Yeah, that's key and that's critical as well. Yes.
Yeah.
But you know something. This type of because when we see design and build, okay, the consultant he come and say, okay, I don't want anybody to come and engage in the design stage because the consultant he knows exactly what the clients need. But at the end, there are many options just to build something. As you said now, waterproofing. There are still several options, and each and every option it costs some amount of money. And based on the client requirement and due to the experience of the contractor, the construction experience, they know exactly which one could be expensive, which one could be cheaper, what are the client budget, and which one is good for the project. And at the end, it will meet the authority requirements.
Isn't it all about then reducing the risk in terms of buildability and manageability?
Yes, of course.
That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Yeah. So, as an architect, Glenn, I mean, how often do you see a contractor's influence on what you design? I mean, or how often do you get that requirement to make some provisions to have the contractor's risk in terms of constructability covered? Do you see that, or
Not
is it
often
something?
enough.
Not
And
at all.
actually, I think that this is exactly the tension that we need to use and the habits that we need to break. There are cultural behaviors that they just don't change just because. Uh, this is not how we behave as human beings. So we need to be convinced of it. And not only being convinced of it on the cost side of it, there are some responsibilities that we have, and
Yes.
we can no longer continue thinking as the contractor, the consultant. We need to work together, and because this requires the highest level of engagement, and this applies to every single discussion about BIM.
So just on closing statements before we take questions from the audience, Bob, quickly summing it up, do you think there is a huge scope for BIM to be effective in safety management, site management, logistics management? 2 words to summarize it up, and then your opinion on this.
Yeah, of course, of course. But as we said, the problem is how to convince, everybody to transfer his work from this type of work, from the 2D to a 3D platform. It's not easy to convince everyone. As you said right now, we need to educate ourselves to adopt the technology in our construction methodology, including HSE, and even for the facility management also, it's very important.
Dr. Yasmin, closing remarks?
As all my colleagues here they say, it's all about education. It's all about awareness. Yes, BIM and many other new emerging technologies can really help site safety, productivity, efficiency, but we need to look at it from a strategic perspective, and we need to, I mean, as I mentioned, we are dreaming and doing research with addressing industry challenges for long years, but industry is resistant. That's the main challenge. First, we have to increase that awareness and understanding.
Sheikh, closing remarks?
Yeah, of course, it can save a lot of money, and then that's why from UK to Dubai, all the government are forcing to use the BIM and new technology in the construction. Of course, it's save a lot of money. But if you're doing the BIM for because of it's in the contractual document, I just want to meet the contract document. I need to have a BIM model. Whenever the client will come, I want to show it. Of course, you can't save the money. If you are seriously taking as a BIM as a part of your process, even when I would say even your director should able to open the model, he want to see and walk through. Then of course you can save a lot of money.
Yeah. Joy, closing remarks?
Okay. I believe, I agree with you that we all need to raise awareness. And I think it's a challenge for everyone sitting in this room is to show them how it should be done. That BIM would be the answer to not just health and safety, but also there's a lot of technologies that we could utilize, such as virtual technology, drones for site inspection, laser scanning to check what's in site and what's in the model. There's a lot, so I think we need to utilize those technologies. It may be a big investment at the end, at the beginning, but at the end we could show them the results, that it's worth it.
Any other?
Well, just a small thing. I mean, health and safety should be at the core issue in the industry, and the way that it should not be a discussion whether how important it is or how much responsibility we have on it. At the end of the day, this is built by people. We need to take care of them, and that's our asset. Technology is available, but we need to use it in our benefit. That's
I think all of the panelists quite agree with that. You know, it's about time that whatever we are discussing and then being a part of behind the screens and the computers, we have to take this to the field. So